Backwards compatibility on the Switch 2 has improved a multitude of titles, and Minecraft is no exception. The game hasn't received a dedicated Switch 2 update yet, so there's no graphical difference between the two, but there's pretty massive differences elsewhere. Let's first take a look at the loading times of entering a normal world. The Switch 2 cuts the load by over 50%, which is a solid improvement. Also, quick note, while I was recording the next part, my game on the original Switch actually crashed not once, but twice. For comparison, on the Switch 2, I didn't observe a single crash throughout this entire video. Servers on this game generally take a pretty long time to fully load. Thankfully, the Switch 2 once again cuts it down by a pretty big margin, with another roughly 50% improvement. This upgrade to loading isn't just felt when entering worlds or servers either, even the main menu screen feels a good deal snappier. Although it's not transformative, it is definitely a nice upgrade. Within the worlds themselves, chunks definitely load a lot faster. Do keep in mind that the max render distance in this version is only 12 chunks, sadly. The original Switch often can't keep up, even showing a chat message explaining it to the player. On the opposite end, the Switch 2 is actually able to keep up with the player flying around. So this is actually a pretty good improvement if you're using an elytra and flying around with fireworks, for example. Now let's move on to performance testing. On a basic world, the Switch 1's performance is pretty unstable, even in basic situations. It keeps to the 50 to 60 FPS range pretty consistently. The Switch 2 is flawless in this scenario, with a locked 60 FPS, so no surprises here. We're going to use Stampy's Lovely World as a benchmark for what counts as a heavy world in this example, and here's where we start to see some big improvements. The Switch is chugging along, even dropping into the 30s. In stark contrast, the new console is locked at 60 FPS. We see this trend continue even when we're walking through the world on a small scale. Servers are where performance definitely gets the worst. Having a good amount of players running around completely tanks the FPS on the Switch 1, and even just standing in the lobby on the Hive, the game struggles. The Switch 2 improves this experience massively, showcasing up to a 2.4 times performance increase in this situation. Using Hunger Games as a benchmark for a general match, the Switch is having a hard time when a lot of players are near. Thankfully, as soon as we get to where you'll spend most of your time, the open areas, the FPS does in fact stabilize a lot more. On the other hand, the Switch 2 is peacefully running smoothly, with only a minor drop here or there. Booting up another server, CubeCraft. Yeah, I'm gonna be honestly real, this is running pretty terribly. The Switch 2 is able to perform 2 to 3 times better though, and is still dropping into the 40s. Originally, I thought that entering one of the mini-game lobbies, where there's much less player activity, was going to improve the frame time immensely. This is still better though, with the Switch 1 getting around 30 to 40 FPS, but the Switch 2 is no doubt a way better experience at 60 frames. Going into one of the modes of the Lifeboat server, Lifeboat City, this was one of the worst areas I found in my testing. Focusing in on how the Switch 1 performs in the first area, it hits as low as 9 FPS, which in my opinion is quite bad. If we look at the Switch 2, it does suffer one major drop, but is otherwise a 60 FPS experience. Overall, the Switch 2 runs this version of the game much better than the original console. I honestly hope to see a dedicated update supporting it to hopefully allow at least higher render distances. Regardless, that's all for this video. I just want to say thank you so much for watching.